"Don't follow me," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut through the cold evening air. Jake stopped in his tracks. A single dad, a janitor at the downtown community center, he wasn't in the habit of meddling in other people's problems. He had his own, bills piling up, long shifts, and a 7-year-old daughter who thought he hung the moon. But something about the young woman storming away caught his attention. Maybe it was the way her hands shook as she clutched her coat tighter. Maybe it was the redness around her eyes, like she'd been holding back tears for miles. Or maybe it was the simple fact that she was heading toward the abandoned bridge at the edge of town, the one where the city lights faded and the darkness swallowed everything whole. Jake wasn't a hero. He was a man who scrubbed floors and made sure his kid had lunch money. But that night, instinct told him to keep her in sight. She spun around when she heard his footsteps. "I said don't follow me," she shouted, her voice cracking now, softer under the anger. Jake raised his hands. "All right," he said gently. "I won't. Just wanted to make sure you're okay." "I'm fine," she muttered, turning away. But then she stumbled. Just slightly. And in that split second, Jake saw it, the thing that made his heart clench. A hospital band still on her wrist. He didn't know her story. Didn't need to. He just knew what that band meant: pain, exhaustion, maybe a fight she felt she was losing. So he tried again, his voice steady, the same way he talked to his daughter when she had nightmares. "Listen," he said softly, keeping his distance. "I don't know what you're carrying tonight, but I know what it's like when everything feels too heavy. Feels like there's no one left." She froze. And in the orange glow of the streetlights, Jake saw her shoulders shake. A silent surrender. She didn't tell him the details, not then. Just bits and pieces between shaky breaths. A fight with her family. Losing her job. A hospital visit she didn't want to talk about. "I didn't want anyone to see me like this," she whispered. Jake didn't offer advice. He didn't tell her things would magically get better. He just stood there, a quiet presence in the cold night, proving she wasn't invisible. Sometimes, kindness isn't loud. It doesn't always come dressed as heroics. Sometimes it's a janitor with tired eyes who sees you when you think you're unseen. Weeks later, she showed up at the community center, healthier. Standing taller. She told Jake that night on the bridge was the moment she realized she wasn't as alone as she thought. "Thanks for not walking away," she said. Jake just smiled. "Sometimes," he replied, "people just need someone to stay." In a world moving too fast, it wasn't money or status or grand gestures that saved her. It was simple human kindness, the kind that costs nothing but can mean everything. And for anyone feeling like they're carrying too much. Sometimes, the right person noticing at the right moment can change everything. Jake didn't think much of it at first. He wasn't used to being anyone's hero. The janitor. The guy who fixed the leaky faucet and mopped up after basketball practice. That was who he was. But the memory of that night stayed with him. The look in her eyes, like she'd been carrying the weight of the whole world, and for a moment, he was the only thing keeping her from slipping under. A week passed before he saw her again. It was during one of his late-night shifts, the kind where the hallways echoed with the sound of his mop bucket wheels. She appeared at the door of the gym, looking hesitant, like she wasn't sure she belonged there. "Hey," he said, setting the mop aside. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "I think so. I just didn't know where else to go." Jake waved her in. "You can sit. It's warm in here." She smiled faintly, taking a seat on the bleachers while he kept working. He didn't push her to talk. Sometimes silence was its own kind of kindness. Over the next few weeks, she kept coming back. Not every day, but enough that Jake started keeping an extra cup of hot chocolate in the break room. She told him her name was Emily. She was 24. And life, as she put it, had gotten really messy, really fast. Jake didn't have answers. But he had time. And sometimes, that was enough. One evening, as his daughter Lily sat coloring at a corner table, Emily stopped by again. Lily offered her a crayon, completely unaware of the battles this young woman had been fighting. Emily smiled, the first real smile Jake had seen on her face, and started coloring beside her. That simple moment, a child sharing crayons with a stranger, it did something words couldn't. Weeks later, Emily came by looking different. Brighter somehow. Like she was starting to see herself the way the rest of the world could see her, someone worth staying for. She told Jake she'd started therapy. That she was applying for jobs again. That maybe things weren't perfect, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had a tomorrow worth planning for. "Thanks for not giving up on me," she said quietly. Jake shook his head. "I didn't do much." "You stayed," she said. "Sometimes, that's everything." Months down the line, Emily got a job at the community center helping with the after-school program. Lily adored her. The kids adored her.